Good morning. Today I'll just talk to you about some research I did which talked about the environmental and social implications of living in these housing estates. Um, these estates are typically comprised of a few repeated housing typologies within each street with little sort of distinction between each house. And this uniformity completely contradicts contemporary place-making theories which argue for variety, complexity, identity in the city's built realm. Additionally, such theories do suggest that successful communities are the result of a constant piecemeal regeneration enacted by the communities that inhabit them, which differs from housing estates, which typically are built in one fell swoop from a master plan. So research is needed into the viability of these estates, and at the present, the research is focused more on the environmental sustainability and economic sustainability of these estates, not their social sustainability. So yes, what's the social effect of living in this versus this? So just an overview of the research. Basically, as I said, social sustainability must study both the physical environment and the psychological environment. And so this research has focused on both of those realms. Some of the key theories which are discussed and used to generate the methodology for the research come from placemaking theories, which suggest that things like diversity, richness, and complexity generate healthy communities. And also place identity theories, which sort of say that places which are distinct or unique foster a sense of community and belonging in the individuals that inhabit them. And then also, as estates are produced from master plans, meaning that they're finished once the sort of building is complete, they don't really support planning theories such as patient piecemeal growth, slow incremental building, which are said to be things which create a real sense of place. So the methodology for the research. Basically, the research was conducted in 4 case study streets along the Pacific Motorway in Queensland between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. And 2 of the streets were from housing estates, and 2 were from more conventional streets where each house differed from the one previous. So the only other difference between the streets is the age. So one of the streets is 30 years old, and then the youngest street was a housing estate at the Gold Coast, which is only 5 years old. But apart from that, there's about the same number of houses. All the houses are worth the same. They're all cul-de-sacs, and they're all 1 or 2 story separate residences which make up the street. So the first street was a case study. The first case study was from Daisy Hill in Queensland, where every house is different. The next is from Ormeo, which is a housing estate where every house is pretty much the same. The next street is from Helensvale, further along the highway, where each house is different. This is a younger street. And then the youngest street is Robina, where all the houses are the same typically and all under about 5 years old. So a survey was dropped out to each of these, outlining what the research was about, and also giving them a reply paid envelope or giving them a web address with which to fill in their surveys. So the first section really just focused on general background information, just working out which street the residents were from, how long they'd lived there, and really just trying to see what drew them to the area in the first place. And then the second set of questions first focused on the physical environment. So it used theories such as urban drama, complexity, diversity, interactive richness, these sorts of things, and asked questions about the identity of the street, the pride of the street, and also the social cohesion of the area. This was also trying to pick up on things, on the sort of the how the street is changing over time. So do they think that the appearance of their street was improving over time or deteriorating over time, and the same for their social cohesion. trying to work out if patient piecemeal growth, as suggested, is really fundamental in creating great communities. And then there was also some phenomenological questions about the experience of the street. So what are people's favourite ways to be in their street, and how do they best like to move through it? So all of those questions were based on the literature review and sort of coming up with a framework which compared placemaking theories with obvious differences, with obvious sort of things that housing estates would lack because of these. So when I discuss the results, when I say talking about Group A, I'm talking about streets where the houses were all varied, and Group B, it's where they were from estates. Basically, the groups were put together so that you could just discuss the results clearly, using street variety as the key dependent variable. When asked their reasons for moving to the streets, there wasn't any great difference actually between either of the streets. Both sort of cited location-based things, family-based reasons, or affordability, etc., as being reasons, not necessarily the appearance of the street. So the first sort of set of questions about whether or not the street has a strong identity or the house has a strong identity didn't really separate the groups that much, but Group A is more inclined to think that their houses have a strong identity, and they sort of state the reasons for this as being their street appeal or the front appearance of their house, or its architectural design, the era in which it was created, or recent renovations which they've carried out themselves. Group B said things such as that they thought their houses were the same as the others around it. The only thing that really differed was the two big gum trees. So vegetation has the ability to differentiate and create identity. When it came to the street's identity, there wasn't a great difference between the groups, but Group A did think that their identity was stronger, and they had reasons for this: beautiful trees, lots of trees, greenscapes, and the mixture of houses creating a nice Mickey Mouse effect, whereas Group B wasn't really all that clear. They just believed that their streets being a cul-de-sac was what gave it a sense of identity. Pride. When we talk about the level of pride between the groups, both groups are proud of their houses, but the reason that Group A is proud of their house is because of alterations that they've done which improve the originals, painting they've carried out, nice gardens that it was built to their design, whereas Group B is more sort of proud of family reasons, so mortgages and paying off mortgages and things of that nature. When it came to street pride, again, both groups were proud of their streets. Group A did cite things like neighborly bond, good community, good and getting to know each other, whereas Group B didn't necessarily mention those things, but both groups are proud of their houses. When asked to describe the everyday experience of their street, the only big differences between the two groups was that Group A really believed that their streets were attractive, whereas Group B didn't. Group B did think that their streets were quiet, a lot more so than Group A, and whether or not this has to do with the level of life on the street is something which needs further study. But the reason that I asked this question was to see whether or not the Jacobs sort of theories of urban drama and diversity in the street was something that residents noticed. It wasn't necessarily when asked about whether or not they found their streets exciting, satisfying, stimulating, or sort of dull, boring, and lifeless. There wasn't any great difference between the two groups. Now, the final sort of set of questions about the changing nature of the street over time is where the results did become quite interesting. So when we're still talking about the physical environment, not the social environment, Group A was remarkably more satisfied with the physical environment, with their own physical environments. Whereas Group B were fairly clear that they were pretty dissatisfied actually. Where and then what was the most interesting is that 100% of the people from the varied streets thought that their street was improving over time. No one from Group B thought that their street was improving over time, and a lot of them were unsure. And so Group A, I think, felt that their street's physical appearance was improving over time because they there's some nice houses being built, people were looking after their gardens, the trees were growing more, people were getting to know each other better. Whereas Group B sort of believed that they didn't really know, the street had stayed the same, maybe with some minor improvements. And then when it came to the social cohesion, the results was fairly similar. Group A thought that they were much more satisfied with their social environment, much more aware of a sense of community and the social cohesion than Group B, and they believed that this was improving over time. Group B didn't believe that the social cohesion was improving over time. Comments such as people move out, new ones come, no one talks, stuck in the day-to-day business, lives are too busy, were fairly negative from Group B, whereas in Group A they believed that they were getting to know neighbours better. Some new people are moving in across the road, some older inhabitants are bonding more, etc., etc. And there was a much sort of larger outpouring of community spirit from Group A. And so, an overview of the findings. Both groups have similar ideas about the level of identity in their streets. They described, what was interesting though is that Group A described this identity, and there was place identity theory which suggested that if you need to actually have a clear idea of what creates this distinctive identity in the minds of residents in order for it to be helpful in terms of improving a community. It showed that this place identity is a visual thing. It's distinctive elements, both built and natural, which when combined in a unique way sort of enforce identity. And these elements can be numerous. For instance, the effect of a line of fences or the singular effect of a single tree dividing two houses. But the ability to imprint and affect one's environment produces a real sense of place and solidifies identity. Both groups are proud of their houses, but Group A was proud of two things that Group B didn't mention. Group A were proud of work they had done on their houses, and they were proud of the relationships with their neighbours, who contributed to the street through renovating and upkeep. And so a trend emerged where the ability to alter and affect one's house is what produces a sense of pride and creates identity. And this Group A's enthusiasm for this ongoing renewal of their streets was very clear. The entire group thought that the physical appearance of their streets was improving. They constantly worked on their properties. These minor alterations and renovations helped them to articulate what they enjoyed about the evolution of their streets and give it optimism for their future. Whereas Group B could not see this constant renewal, and they didn't mention these renovations, and this might suggest that that the ability to infect one's environment really does improve a sense of community. It supports the theories of patient piecemeal growth of Alexander's and the product of many wills of Lynch's, whereby a slow incremental altering of the environment produces a sense of place. Then it was clear that Group A had a greater optimism for the social cohesion of and sense of community of their streets, and as I said, they believed it to be improving over time. And I suppose this improving over time is what was the most important thing that came out of this research, because to be sustainable by the very definition of the word, communities must be improving over time in both morphological and sociological ways. Variety seems to boost residential satisfaction with their physical environment and give identity. This motivates the residents to work on their properties. adapting, maintaining and renovating, then the altering of the street is what unites the community. It creates an optimism for the future of the streets, both visually and socially, and makes them more sustainable. So this kind of sense of creating community optimism is something which probably should be fed back in at the planning scale, since we could be creating communities which seem to squash bond a bond amongst the streets. Yeah. Thank you.